I'm Matt Carey, documentary editor at Deadline, and welcome to the Deadline studio at Sundance. Here with Yancey Ford, the director of Power, which has just made its world premiere in the premiere section of Sundance. Welcome.
Thanks, Matt. It's good, great to be here.
You're the Oscar nominated director of Strong Island. You were back here with a film that examines the police,
Yeah.
the power and really unchecked power of police
Yeah.
in this country.
Yeah, with Power, what I wanted to do with this film, what we wanted to do with this film, was really pull out to like a 30,000-foot view, and instead of engaging directly with some of the debates that have been happening around policing in the last several years, we really wanted to look at the underlying issue of policing, which is power, and who has power, who power is exerted over, and what power is used for. So, yes, it's about policing, but it really is about the power that the police represent in our society.
Yes, and there, as you explore in extraordinary detail both the history of policing in this country, but as you say, the purpose, and the purpose, broadly speaking, I would say my take on the film is that it's to keep people in place, and meaning within a social structure.
Yes.
And that's the order part of Law and Order, and often that is there's a physical component to it. It's not just a sort of abstract notion of stay in your place. No, it's stay in that building, stay where I tell you to go.
Yes. Stay in the neighborhood where you're supposed to be. Stay in the factory job that we expect you to work without going on strike. One of the things that the film does is really trace the three origin points of policing,
Yeah.
which have to do with slave patrols, the removal of indigenous Americans from their land, and also the policing of immigrants in northeastern cities who weren't yet considered white, who are, considered white today. And what we do is we trace those three lines into, this kind of merging of police power as this mode of state control to keep people in their place, to keep people in line through violence, coercion, and control. And once you see through the archival footage in the film, so much of what we would think is only 20th century policing. When you see that in the 19th century, you get, you begin to get an understanding that there is this expanding police power, this expanding police presence, and this use of police as a function to control and to maintain order in our society. And of course, the question is order as defined by whom?
Yeah, exactly. And it struck me that police power, by definition, is extrajudicial.
Hmm.
It is because they have the capacity to kill really at will.
Hmm.
And, maybe in some very limited cases, or maybe in investigations or whatever, but it is extrajudicial. Judicial. There's no due process involved here at all.
That's right. You know, the police are the one force in American society that can take away your constitutional rights, that can stop you, search you, take possession of your belongings, enter your home, use their just their personal discretion to decide if you present a deadly threat to them, and then act with deadly force to stop you as a threat. One of the things that people need to realize is that an individual police officer is more powerful on a day-to-day basis in your life than any other branch of government. And I think when people, if what we're asking people to do is really to take a step back and think about their relationship to that power. Like, do you deploy police to feel safe? Do other people deploy police against you to feel safe? Where are you in relation to the exercise of the police power in our society? And I think that when people start to ask themselves that question, hopefully they'll realize how vast the police power, is actually in the United States.
Yes, and you explore the origins of the word police, that it comes from polis,
Right.
the people.
The people.
It is, and so you're really asking a very fundamental question that I don't think people ask: is what is the purpose of a police force in our society, whose interests are it serving, and what are we losing? I mean, I would say the film makes a very strong argument that we have slipped somewhere much closer to authoritarianism
Hmm.
in the way that we have allowed police power to evolve in this country.
Indeed. And I think one of the things that the film helps people see, or rather, one of the things that the film really asks people to do is think about what we mean when we say public safety, right?
Mm.
Because we've been told that police are, for public safety. But when we drill down on that idea of public safety, what we encounter is a whole set of problems that we as a society have decided we can't solve, and so we've made them crimes, right? We've made being homeless a crime. We've made being poor a crime. We've made that, the crimes that are committed out of necessity by poor people, crimes like shoplifting. We've made not having childcare a crime. So when we think about, authoritarianism, and and so that's one part. The lens of authoritarianism in the film, I think, is most clearly examined when we talk about the policification of the military. We look at different places around the world where America has turned its military into a police force, and then of course people are surprised when our police begin to look like our military. But really, there is this feedback loop over the course of history where we've deployed our military to act as police, and through those deployments, when they return home, the influence on policing is increased militarization. And so there comes a point, in my view, where the difference between police and the military is so slight, that you and oftentimes can't tell the difference.
Yes, and we're, seeing that candidate Trump, former President Trump, is essentially openly saying that and he did that during the end of his presidency after the protests following George Floyd, is like
Yes.
attempting to call out the National Guard to suppress demonstrations,
Yes.
that are part of our constitutional rights, and he's promising to do more of that.
Yes.
But by the same token, what was President Biden's response to the killing of George Floyd and then the protests that said, let's defund police? No, he says, no, let's fund
It's fun
police.
place.
And that's, I'm sorry, that's what we've seen historically going back to the Kerner Commission in the 1960s, is that any attempt to revisit this, look at it, leads to simply more funding of police.
Yes, and I think that's one of the really important things that people need to understand, is that even though there have been calls to defund police, there has never been a moment in our history as a country where police have been defunded. In fact, every presidential administration, and we kept it on a federal level for the sake of the film, every single president, from LBJ straight to through to President Biden, have pumped tens of billions of dollars into policing. So this myth that police have been defunded and are therefore less effective, and our communities are unsafe because of it, that's nonsense. The police have gotten bigger consistently over time. They have been funded and funded consistently over time. And what we have wound up with, I think, if you take a step back and look around you, is a police apparatus that is not necessarily here to keep our society safe, because they don't necessarily think of safety in the same way that I might think of safety. And oftentimes they look at people on the margins, like me and others, as threats to the social order. So there's a lot to really unpack when you talk about defund the police, and the realities of how much money they've received over generations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the film is Power, director Yancey Ford. It's a Netflix film, so it'll be on Netflix later this year.
Yep, later this year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us in the Deadline studio, Yancey Ford.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure.